The Minnesota Vikings are terrible. Not terrible in the sense of being bad at football, because that's just not true. They've actually had some really good teams over the years, but terrible in the sense that year after year they manage to collapse in the most gut-wrenching way imaginable. Now each heartbreak is a masterstroke, a beautifully crafted disaster worthy of its own video. Perhaps their 2003 season featured their most creative meltdown yet. This time there wasn't a playoff game. It was a grueling marathon that happened over the course of several weeks. They opened their season with 6 straight wins before dropping 4 in a row. They teeter-tottered their way to the season finale against the Arizona Cardinals, who were probably the worst team in the league. The Vikings blew an 11-point lead in the final 2 minutes of the game, setting up one of the greatest radio calls of all time. Take it away, Paul Allen.
Get back, guys. Here it is. The season's on the line. 2 receivers left and right. McCown takes the snap. He steps up. He's all by himself. Fires into the end zone. Caught! Touchdown! No! The Cardinals have knocked the Vikings out of the playoffs!
Josh McCown was brilliant in his role of spoiler in the grand finale of one of the greatest collapses in the history of professional sports. But I would argue that the climax for this collapse happened a couple weeks earlier. Week 15, 2003, the Vikings are obviously very much alive in the playoff hunt. Their opponent, however, is not. The Bears are 5-8 and their season has been pretty bad. They've started like 37 different quarterbacks, but they have some exciting young players, and today they're putting up a fight. But in a microcosm for Minnesota's season, the Vikings find themselves in position to win late in the game because Randy Moss keeps bailing them out. Now, Randy Moss is a top 3 all-time wide receiver, and in 2003, he's at the height of his powers. Over time, his last name's become a verb, meaning to outjump one's defender to catch the ball. For example, here's a guy getting mossed, and there's a guy getting mossed, and there's another guy getting mossed. You get it. Now, Moss already has a touchdown today, in addition to 7 receptions. He adds another 2 catches on this drive, helping the Vikings get to the Bears' 10-yard line. Minnesota could tie it with a field goal, but given how futile the Bears' offense has been forever, a touchdown would probably put the game away. Everyone watching knows what's about to happen. The ball's going to Randy Moss. He assumes his position at the line and faces his next victim. Are you kidding me? That's a rookie. That's a rookie corner out there. You're putting a rookie corner on Randy Moss in the biggest moment of the game. Single coverage on Randy Moss. Look, I'd understand if it was any other receiver, but it's Randy Moss. It's a one-on-one matchup between a squirrel and an acorn. Or, in this case, a peanut. Make no mistake, Charles Tillman is an NFL legend, but he's often overshadowed by some of his contemporaries, including Charles Woodson, Champ Bailey, Darrelle Revis, Ty Law, and several others. Some argue that Tillman wasn't a lockdown corner, and therefore he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame, but his approach to the game was so different from anyone who's ever played his position. Charles Tillman belongs in the Hall of Fame because of his ability to elevate talent, his impact on every game in which he played, and his lasting impression on the league. So Charles Tillman was the ultimate team player in many different ways. While some corners are return specialists, Tillman was more of a return specialist fullback, as seen on this Nathan Vasher missed field goal return. Now if you notice, the block actually takes him out of bounds, but he still manages to be the first one to greet his teammate in the end zone and start the dog pile. Now almost a year to the day later, Devin Hester had a missed field goal return for a touchdown, and Tillman fearlessly pancaked an offensive lineman. This one's got to be one of his best. Watch him take on a Vikings player for about 15 yards before ending up in the end zone on a Devin Hester punt return. Special teams blocking is really just one example of Tillman's ability to put his teammates in position to succeed. He was kind of the ultimate NFL wingman. He often made his cornerbacking tandem partner look like Deion Sanders, regardless of who it was. We first saw this in 2005, with Tillman patrolling his own side of the field. Nathan Vasher grabbed 8 interceptions that year, earning first-team All-Pro honors in just his second season. 1 year later, Vasher, in addition to free agent signing Ricky Manning Jr., combined for 8 interceptions to go along with Tillman's 5 en route to a Super Bowl appearance. Jump ahead to 2009, where we see Tillman's partner in crime become Zachary Bowman, who finished with 6 interceptions, tying him for second in the league. Tillman forced 6 fumbles that year, in addition to this pick 6, which was the only cool thing to happen in this game. At this point, he was very much a blue-collar, unsung hero. In his first 8 seasons, he did a lot of dirty work without much national recognition. But then in 2011, his efforts were finally rewarded in the form of a Pro Bowl appearance. He probably could have beat out D'Angelo Hall for a spot in 2010, but he didn't get the luxury of facing Jay Cutler. And then in 2012, Tillman really burst on the scene and became a household name. He finished with 10 forced fumbles that year, which is an NFL record tied with O.C. Umenyiora, and he returned each of his interceptions for touchdowns. This performance earned him first-team All-Pro honors. Long overdue, but well-deserved. It was also the year we saw the emergence of cornerback Tim Jennings. Jennings led the league with 9 interceptions and made the All-Pro second team. So for those of you keeping track, this is now cornerback number 2 to make an All-Pro team while playing alongside Charles Tillman. Unfortunately, the Bears' offense faltered again, but the pair was set to continue their dominance in 2013. Things started off really well for them. They were both making plays. Tillman had 3 interceptions and 3 forced fumbles in 8 games, but a triceps injury cut his season short. Jennings still managed to earn Pro Bowl honors in 2013, but after his partner in crime went down, he was never the same. Tillman re-injured his right triceps in Week 2 of the 2014 season, and Jennings was a non-factor throughout the year. Something unique to the 21st century Chicago Bears is that 6 times a season, they had the challenge of facing the best running back, wide receiver, and quarterback in the NFL. Typically, their offense wasn't good enough to keep pace, so the defense was always expected to pick up the slack. Now, Tillman knew that the greatest defensive players were the ones who could steal the ball by any means necessary. It's easier said than done for most cornerbacks, who don't tend to be hard hitters and don't always see the ball thrown their way. If Tillman wanted to be a turnover wizard, interceptions wouldn't be enough. He had to be creative in order to be menacing. I'd say it worked out pretty well. In a day and age where defenses have been effectively neutered by fantasy football-friendly rules, the peanut punch is one of the most successful and effective modern-day defensive innovations. This is what sets Charles Tillman apart from his peers. Here we have every player in NFL history who's forced at least 20 fumbles in his career. The chart is full of Hall of Famers and future Hall of Famers, most of whom are pass rushers. So the top 5 in order are Robert Mathis, Julius Peppers, John Abraham, Dwight Freeney, and Jason Taylor. each of whom are in Canton or Canton bound. But Tillman comes in at number 6 with a whopping 44 forced fumbles, which is far and away the most of any defensive back. The only defensive backs in his neighborhood are the revolutionary safety Brian Dawkins and the ageless wonder Charles Woodson. Wait, that's not a fumble. Let me find a fumble. Here's a fumble. Anyway, Tillman's lapped every other defensive back in this category, with the next closest having half as many, Nate Clements. Although, I'm still shocked he doesn't have 23. Peanut's punches are what set him over the edge, but he was also excellent in pass coverage. He had 38 career interceptions, 8 of which he took to the house, and he had some great matchups with some of the NFL's best wideouts. And I know forced fumbles don't automatically result in turnovers, just like interceptions can be given right back. The point is that Tillman was an expert at giving his team a chance. He transcended the typical expectations of his position and became his own entity. Not a cornerback, not a linebacker, but a Chicago Bear. So here we have 21 Pro Bowl cornerbacks of the 1990s to 2010s, and they are listed by career forced fumbles and interceptions and by career games played. There's also a 125 game minimum, and we're not counting postseason. So the thing about cornerbacks is that sometimes when they don't show up in the stat sheet, it's actually a good thing because it means the offense is staying away from him. But these particular numbers say a lot about one's playmaking ability over the course of a career and the ability to provide opportunities for your team. The consensus greatest corner of all time is obviously Deion Sanders, who falls in the middle of this Colorado thing. For whatever reason, you've never been exposed to a Deion Sanders highlight film, go do that after this video. You won't regret it. Then we got Charles Woodson up here, who's played more games and has more combined interceptions and forced fumbles than anyone. Then we got Broncos legend Champ Bailey, who is trying to polka dot. Now, Champ had a long career, but not quite as long as Buccaneers great Rondé Barber. Then to the left, we got two-time Super Bowl champ Asante Samuel, who's played in many big games and has had many big moments. And then we got Darrelle Revis, who kindly left his island to join us. Thanks for coming, Darrelle. Now, some of these guys are already in the Hall of Fame. Some of them will eventually be in the Hall of Fame. Where does Peanut fit in? Oh, okay, there he is. 82 total and 168 career games. That's insane. Let me show you why. I averaged out the data from the last chart and sprinkled in a few modern-day players. The best football players don't only take advantage of opportunities, they create them by any means necessary. You can say what you want about Charles Tillman. You can point to his shortage of all-pro teams and Pro Bowl selections. You can argue he wasn't even the best defensive player on his own team. But when Charles Tillman played, there was nearly a 50% chance that at some point during any given game, he was either going to give his team a chance to take the ball, or he was going to take it himself. He was more than an impact player. He was a turnover architect, a grandmaster of creating opportunities. He was a bad motherfucker. Oh, hell yeah, pie chart, let's go. All right, so I'm moving some goalposts with this chart, so please take it with a grain of salt. Since around 1998, cornerbacks and a handful of defensive backs who have played corner and safety with at least 12 forced fumbles have forced somewhere around 207 fumbles. Now, the point is that of those, 77 were caused by two guys named Charles, while the other roughly 130 were caused by guys with all sorts of different names. However, this chart doesn't include one particular cornerback, a guy who's forced 19 fumbles by effectively mastering the peanut punch. Do you know who it is? Don't roll your eyes. Sorry, John, I couldn't help myself. Anyway, Josh Norman, 2015 Carolina Panthers, first team All-Pro for the first and only time in his career. He parlayed that into a massive deal with Washington, and now he's with the 49ers, where he leads the league in forced fumbles. Now, when he was with Carolina, who do you think his partner in crime was? Oh boy. So I told you all about Charles Tillman's season being cut short in week 2 of 2014. 2015, he signs a one-year deal with Carolina, and even though he was 35 and coming off of 2 season-ending injuries, he had a very solid season and started 12 of 16 regular season games. Unfortunately, he tore his ACL and couldn't play in the playoffs that year, but his impact on that team was evident from the beginning. Now, Tillman's second Super Bowl run was very similar to his first one. Ron Rivera coaching 2 great defenses, led by 2 great middle linebackers, 2 very solid defensive performances against a Peyton Manning-led horse team, but the offense kind of literally couldn't find their footing. Now, the main difference is, obviously, Charles Tillman didn't play in Super Bowl 50, and he retired shortly thereafter. It was a brutal microcosm. Rex, what are you doing? God damn it. Rex, hold on to the ball. Hold on to the fucking ball. God. I'm over it. I'm honestly over it. You know, it's been a long time since that's happened. The one thing that still will always kind of bum me out, though, is just how Tillman kind of has a bit of a Jacob deGrom thing going, where it doesn't matter what he does to keep his team in the game because they will let him down. The offense will let him down. If the Bears ever had an offense that resembled anything remotely consistent, maybe they would have taken advantage of more of the opportunities Tillman created. But then they wouldn't be the Bears. So you just kind of got to appreciate them for what they are. Anyway, there's no question that Tillman's lasting impression is seen all over the NFL today. And it's not just Josh Norman. Many cornerbacks have taken the peanut punch and put it in their arsenal, including All-Pro Marlon Humphrey, who led the league with 8 in 2020. And really, it's not just cornerbacks. Indianapolis Colts linebacker Darius Leonard is currently second in the league in forced fumbles, and Greg Olsen knows his preferred method.
This is the weekly peanut punch, Kev. It feels like not a game goes by that we don't talk about.
The point is that even though Peanut is no longer playing, his presence is still felt whenever a defensive player gives the football a knuckle sandwich. It's a game-changing maneuver. Even Patrick Chung resorted to it in the Super Bowl. Now, this wasn't a forced fumble, but we know how this game went down. Simply put, Charles Tillman changed the game by changing games. Some players should be in the Hall of Fame because they're one of a kind. In Tillman's case, it's kind of the opposite. Tillman's Hall of Fame worthy because there are so many players who are following in his footsteps. He's the ideal role model for defensive players at all positions. You know, even as a Bears fan, watching Randy Moss play was always so cool. The dude was electric. I mean, the fact that to this day, his last name means to posterize one's defender, that speaks volumes about what he meant to the league. But if offensive players get a colloquialism, I think defensive players deserve one too, you know? Gotta have a counterpunch. And Peanut said, "Hold my beer." So, let's recap. What is Peanut's Canton case? Peanut never won a Super Bowl, but in 2013 he was honored with an award that is much more impactful to a lot of people. The Walter Payton Man of the Year award is given to one player every year to recognize his humanitarianism. And at the end of the season, Tillman won it. He found a cause of importance to him, and he used his platform to make the lives of children better. His foundation is aptly named the Charles Tillman Cornerstone Foundation, and it's dedicated to providing resources and opportunities to families in need. Now, there are plenty of players in the league who are just as deserving of this award, but I still think it's really cool that Tillman specifically was singled out for his goodwill. His whole career was defined by his ability to lead by example, to provide opportunities, and to make an impact. It's fitting that his greatest off-the-field distinction is an award that commends him for these very traits. Now, the award is named after the late Walter Payton, who happens to be the greatest Chicago Bear of all time and a top 5 player in the history of football. There are very few players who have ever come close to Payton in regards to football skills. But when it comes to changing the game and creating a new way of striking fear into the hearts of opponents, Payton and Peanut are one and the same. Peanut's selflessness, fortitude, ingenuity, and ability to bring out the best in everyone made him a revolutionary player and the ultimate NFL role model. Someone get this guy a gold jacket. Hi friends, thank y'all for watching this. It's really cool of you to do that. You didn't have to, but you did, so dope. Go check the link in the description. It'll take you to the Charles Tillman Cornerstone Foundation. And check it out. They do some really cool things over there. Donate if you can. Lots of great stuff. Also, subscribe to my channel if you haven't. I'm going to post a lot more content like this. A lot of Canton cases that need to be made. And I don't know how to say goodbye on video. So,